Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pinstriped Prospects Podcast, episode 6 of season number 2. We're happy to have you back this week to talk some more Yankees spring training baseball. We have just 2 more episodes left before the start of the regular season, and really 3 episodes left before the start of the minor league season. So everything's getting underway. We got the roster cutting itself down a little bit. We had some guys go back to minor league camp this week, so we're getting ready for the start of the regular season. We're happy to have you along for the ride. I'm Ricky Keeler. I'll be joined in just a couple of seconds by the founder of Pinstriped Prospects, Robert Pimpsner. We're going to talk about our minor league position of the week, and we're going to get into, of course, a sad note with the Yankees this week. And he's going to talk also about minor league spring training because he's going down there. We're going to have great exclusive coverage, and he's going to tell you all about it later on. And then the second part of the show, Robert Coles is going to join, one of our major league writers. We're going to get into the Aaron Judge injury, Gary Sanchez's injury, and what's gone on in spring training this week as the Yankees continue their Grapefruit League slate. We want to remind you, of course, that you can get involved with the show at any time. You can tweet us at Pinstripe Pros, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, tweet me on Twitter at Rickinator555. It's at RECK letter I, Nader, like in Terminator 555. You can email me too, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. There are plenty of ways you can get in contact with us. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Please give us that 5-star rating. We'd love to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback, what guests you want to see, what segments you want us to do, things like that. We want to hear from you, what you like, what you don't like. You can also subscribe on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, wherever else to get your podcast. Pinstripe Prospects Podcast is probably there. You can also leave a voicemail, 908-376-6360. Again, it's 908-376-6360. So as I mentioned, join me for the first part of the show. The founder of Pinstripe Prospects, Robert Pimpsner, is here. Rob, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, Ricky. It's good to be back.
Happy to have you. Of course, we got to get into a sad note, of course, and I want to first off say our thoughts and prayers are with the Rodman family. Of course, Yankee scout Kelly Rodman passed away due to cancer. She was one of 3 female scouts. We know the Yankees are really big on making sure people succeed regardless of their gender. I think that's really important. We have a great profile up last year. Amanda Levine at the draft talked to Kelly Rodman. So if you want to go read that interview through a Dugout subscription, we'll talk more about that later. You're able to do so. But Rob, I want to get your thoughts on Kelly. Just a very sad day in the Yankee family this past week.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was honestly in shock when I heard the news. I got a text. I was like, I didn't know what to say. I honestly did not know she was battling cancer. I had, the few times that we ran into each other, we had some nice conversations talking about, baseball and scouts and everything. And she was successful in a career field that's not always welcoming to women, unfortunately. And she was successful to become an area scout for the Yankees, as well as the people that whose lives she's touched was always better for it. You saw that from the outpouring of support from the Yankees minor league players that tweeted their respects. Like I said, the handful of times that our paths crossed, she was nothing but nice to me. We had good conversations. And she really knew her stuff, and it's just sad to see someone die so young. I mean, I know cancer is just a horrible disease, and I hope one day we do have a cure for it, because it just takes some people way before their time.
Absolutely. I echo that sentiment. And you mentioned players like Ben Ruda, Max Burt tweeted this past week about their thoughts on Kelly. And it was great also, I forget who tweeted this, that they sent Kelly the video of Anthony Volpe getting into a spring training game this past week, and she was a big part in the Yankees scouting Anthony Volpe last year and taking him in the first round. So that was had to be a great moment for her.
Yeah, I mean, she was very involved with that draft. She represented the Yankees in the draft. That's where Amanda had a chance to speak with her, and it was just a good opportunity. The Yankees are probably one of the better teams when it comes to having women in the front office and women in positions that traditionally weren't open to women in the past. And thankfully they had that, and they were able to work with Kelly, and everyone just loved her. And like I said, from my time I've spoken with her, it was nothing but good things.
Absolutely. So once again, our thoughts and prayers are with the Rodman family and the Yankee family during this difficult time. We want to get into our minor league position of the week, and we actually put a poll out this week, and you all answered which position you want us to talk about. So this week we're going to talk about some southpaws. We're going to get into some left-handed pitching. And Rob, left-handed pitching in general for the Yankees was not a position they were big on drafting 2 years ago, but they went heavy with left-handed pitching in last year's draft. And it's when you look at the organization as a whole, they're more predominantly right-handers. But what do you make of the state of the Yankees' left-handed pitchers?
Well, let's first say that us lefties only make up about 10% of the population, so there's not many of us that could play professional baseball. I'm definitely not one of them, and so it just makes it very, very hard to find left-handed pitchers, especially guys that can last in the minor leagues. But they've found some really good ones over the last few years.
Absolutely, and we'll get into some guys that they drafted recently. We'll also get into some guys that have worked their way in the upper tiers of the organization. Let's start with the number one guy everybody likes to talk about, and that's TJ Sikkema, taking the 38th pick in last year's draft. You and I both got to watch him in Staten Island last year. I know we've touched on him in a couple of episodes of this podcast since it relaunched. Just want to get your thoughts on TJ Sikkema. What did you like about him last year?
Well, I liked how he pitched. He was aggressive. He had confidence on the mound. He was the guy that lefty. He was in the low 90s with his fastball. He was topping it out at 95, so it looked really good. Watching him pitch, he has like a sort of low three-quarter delivery, which is really much different than you see from a lot of pitchers, especially in the low minor leagues. And it was just a much different arm angle than people are used to. And he did really well in his short stints in Staten Island last year. I mean, he only had 4 games and he only threw 10 and 2/3, but he struck out 13 batters and he only allowed 1 earned run, and that was only on 6 hits and a walk and a 1 hit batter. Opponents were not hitting against them; they only hit 158 against them, and he was showcasing some good stuff while he was with Staten Island, and I really like him. He's a guy I project could move pretty fast in the Yankees organization. I think he will open the 2020 season with the Tampa Tarpons. I think he's a good lock to be in their starting rotation with some very big, powerful arms. So he would obviously be in the back of that rotation. There's some scouts that think he could be a reliever in the majors, but I say let's give him a chance to start and see what he could do.
One of the things you like, especially if Sikkema starts in Tampa, he's not one of the flamethrowers that you expect at the top of the Tampa rotation. He's going to be a pitcher that can get up into the mid 90s, but he's got some really good off-speed stuff. He's a guy that can throw his curveball and his slider for strikes. He throws it from different arm angles as well, so he's very deceptive. And talking to him last year, he looks into kind of like the way he analyzes the game like a Kyle Kendricks, who doesn't light up the radar gun either, but knows how to locate, knows how to move everything around and execute. So if he can just be that kind of guy in that rotation, he's going to be really successful because he's going to throw all those high A hitters off that are just expecting fastball and maybe a little bit off speed.
Yeah, I mean, you had a really good feature on him last year, so I highly invite everyone to check that out. The Yankees like him. I like him. Remember, this is the pick that they traded from the Reds. They traded Sonny Gray to the Reds to get this pick, so I think he could be something special.
Moving on to another pitcher that right now is in Double A, but he's a guy that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and I know you want to highlight him, and he's also pitched a little bit this year in spring training, James Reeves.
James is such a great guy. He was a former 10th round pick out of the Citadel. He was a starter in college, and he's kind of done whatever the organization asked of him. You could say he's a true organizational guy in that respect, and he's kind of been stuck in Double A the last few years. If you look at his stat lines, you see like he's been in Double A each of the last 4 years, and he's only got a handful of games up in Triple A, and that's because they kind of stock a lot of veteran arms in Triple A, not giving him the chance to get back up there. He's still only 26. I think he's a guy that It will probably end up being an emergency major league help every once in a while if they need a guy to eat some innings, if there's injuries and stuff like that. But when it comes to the Yankees organization, I think it's safe to say he's kind of buried under a lot of people, unfortunately. And you look at his stats, it's not too bad. He has a 2.3 ERA over 137 minor league games, striking out. Sorry, excuse me. He struck out 350 players over 293 in the third innings. He's a guy that he's a true player's player. If you ask some of the players in the minor leagues, who they really like, a lot of the guys will say James Reeves. And, we've had that conversation with a few players where they say, Reeves is a guy that they love playing with and they love, just having on the team. And I want to see him get a shot at the big leagues somewhere. I don't think we'll end up with the Yankees. I think he has potential to have some big league time. It's just don't know where it will be at. And it kind of sucks because, he's a lefty where that three batter rule might have hurt his chances. And, I really want to see what he could do.
It's easy to lose Reeves in the shove. I believe I covered him when he was with Staten Island a few years ago. So he's been around a while in this organization, but he continues, like you said, to produce whatever the Yankees ask him, regardless of what level he's at. So keep an eye on him wherever the Yankees put him going forward into 2020. So we'll stay on the upper level for right now. We'll go to Trevor Lane, who got to pitch, I think it was Sunday in Baltimore during one of the split squads. And the MASN telecast talked really high about Trevor Lane. What can you tell us about him?
Lane is another guy that's kind of gotten buried when it comes to pitching depth. He is a lefty that could hit 95 miles an hour as a reliever. He's a true reliever. There's no chance of him being a starter. He's got a really strong mound presence. He's very aggressive up there. I think he could have some luck in the majors. Some people may profile him as a loggy guy, but I think he could be a good mid-relief guy if given a chance, but it's probably not going to come with the Yankees. There's not many left-handed pitchers that can get it up to 95 miles an hour, so, there is something there where no matter what, a team will take a chance on him. He was Rule 5 eligible. No one took him in the Rule 5 draft. He's probably going to open up the season in Double-A, but I think, if all goes, if they need some emergency help, he's a guy I think they might call on.
Is Lane one of those, like you said, with the emergency help? Like is he also one of those guys, if maybe he gets lost this year, could you see him being dealt in one of those like deals? The Yankees usually make an international money kind of trade, similar to like what Caleb Frere was with the White Sox. It was a year or two ago.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I think his path to the big leagues would unfortunately be with another team. I don't just with the Yankees right now, the way the Yankees are constructed, I don't think there's really a good path for him there. So I could see them trying to deal him for some international money or something.
Let's go back to sort of the younger lefties in this organization. Let's go to Ken Waldichuk, who is another lefty the Yankees drafted in 2019 out of St. Mary's. He's new to the system, only got to make a couple outings professionally last year over the final couple months of the year. But what should Yankee fans expect from him as he starts to get into those upper tiers in the organization?
One of the interesting things about him was he came in, he was like 88, 89 with his fastball, topping out at 90. But with the Pulaski Yankees, they made some changes in his mechanics and changes to his delivery, where now he's throwing in the low 90s, 92 to 94, and topping out at 95. And he's a guy that's got good command. He's got 4 pitches. His slider, changeup, curve. His slider's in the low 80s. He got curve in the high 70s. He's aggressive on the mound. He may not be a big league rotation option. He's definitely a big league relief option in the future. And, he's a guy that might move pretty fast. A lot of it's going to depend on if that velocity sticks for 2020. If that wasn't just a blip on the radar and that velocity sticks and he's consistently throwing 92, 94, topping out 95, I think he's a guy that can move pretty fast. I expect him to head to Charleston to open up the season. Maybe he's in that Charleston rotation to start the year. Maybe he's piggybacking. I don't know, but he's a good guy to keep an eye on this year.
Last guy I want to mention is a relatively – he's not up there at the Lane and the Reeves, but he's kind of in the middle. I usually mess up his last name all the time, so I'm gonna let Rob say it because I usually mess it up. Go right ahead, Rob.
Oh, now that the pressure's on me, yeah, like I'm gonna mess it up. Uh, Josh Maciejewski.
There you go. There you go. So let's talk a little bit about him, a guy who's bounced around between Staten Island, Tampa, got to go to Charleston as well last year. So he's been three different levels.
Didn't he go to
This is
Scranton too?
I think he got a spot to start probably in Scranton for a little bit. So
Yes, he had
he's
3 games in Scranton.
he had a cup of coffee up in AAA, but this is a guy that obviously has attention to this organization, but can get lost a little bit, largely because he doesn't throw hard, but he's got some good off speed.
I would compare him to James Reeves a lot, where he's a player's player and he's a true organizational guy that plays wherever the organization wants him to play. But I think they got something here that, he could fill in the big leagues if they need someone emergency help. They don't want to call up a guy that they'll be scared to DFA.
And he did a good job in the New York Penn League last year. Yes, he's playing guys that he's obviously a little better than, but he held righties and lefties under 200 batting average against. I talked to him last year during his great run with Staten Island. He mentioned he compares himself to a Dallas Keuchel, which things makes a lot of sense because he's not going to fool you with the fastball, but he's got really good changeup. He's been working on the slider. And I think if he can get those two to be effective, he's one of those guys that kind of that lost art where if you can mix in those off speed and locate them well, you might have a good day in the mound. But if you're like, let's say a J Happ, for example, and you miss, teams are going to take you for a ride.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree there.
But definitely a good mix of lefties in this organization. So while you talk a lot about the flamethrowing righties, and you've seen a lot of them in spring training, don't dismiss the lefties. They got a little deception in them. I like the way they're going. But let's talk about minor league spring training down in Tampa this week. Rob's heading down there. He always gives us great exclusive coverage here. So if you get that dugout subscription, Rob's going to have some great insight for us. But before we get into sort of the players to watch, Rob, just give us an insight. What goes on at minor league spring training? What are you looking for when you go down there?
Well, minor league spring training is a different animal than major league spring training. Usually there's not many people there. There may be up to 10,000 people at Steinbrenner Field at minor league spring training. The max you'll probably get is about 50, 60. Most of it are players' families and guys like me, scouts, and there is no separation. You're just all there together. There's 2 games going on at one time. So the way it works is if the AA and AAA teams are on the road facing other teams at their home complexes, the Class A teams, Tampa and Charleston, will be at home playing against the teams at the Yankees complex. So there's usually 2 games going on at one time. Sometimes there may be 3 games. It all depends. I didn't do a count yet, but I think the Yankees have somewhere in around like 150, 175 players in camp this year. So that's just a rough early estimate. And it's a much different animal. You'll see 10-man lineups. You'll see innings end prematurely because guys threw too many pitches. You'll see innings being extended because guys threw too few pitches. You'll see major league guys come down for a few at bats and just at bat every inning, no matter what. And there's a lot of little things that happen through minor league spring training that could just throw everything off. So it's a lot different animal. It's very fun. I enjoy it. I'm usually on my feet running back and forth a lot, so I get my steps in. And it's in the Florida sun, so it's hot. Make sure you always have that sunblock on. I load up on it. I always have water with me, and I just keep going. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be capturing a lot of video, a lot of photos, a lot of notes from all the complex games. We're going to be having a lot of information up on the site. So if you're not yet, become a Dugout subscriber, and you'll get all that information. It's going to be a lot, and we're going to continue it through extended spring training into the season. So there's going to be a lot of great information out there on the site.
And of course, the one player that is going to be in the spotlight at minor league spring training is a player you're all familiar with, Jason Dominguez, the Martian. He is down there at minor league spring training. You've seen videos of his at bats. I'm sure, Rob, that's a guy that you're really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I recently put out an article about 5 players I'm looking forward to seeing, and Jason Dominguez is, of course, number one, just because all the hype around him. This will be my first chance to see him in person, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. He could be facing guys that are AAA, AA guys, so you never know how he would respond. But I'm really looking forward to see how he pitches. There's a few other guys, a lot of other guys, honestly, that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, and we're going to get into your article in a second, is this young outfield mix. Because we talked a little about like the infield logjam a couple weeks ago. You've got Dominguez, but you've got a guy like Kevin Alcantara. You've got a guy like Everson Pereira coming back from injury. So really, the young outfield, I think, is going to be one of those things to watch in minor league spring training too, because a lot of guys have the talent and are ranked highly in prospect rankings.
Don't forget about Anthony Garcia. He's a man among boys. He makes me look like I'm 12 and he's younger than me. And he's a guy I think fans should really keep an eye on because he's one of my favorites. I think he's going to rocket a prospect list this year if he's healthy. Switch hitter, power guy that can, he's as big as Judge, and he could smash the ball. So he's a guy I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Without revealing your whole articles, we want people to go read the article. Give me another player or two that you're keeping an eye on.
Canaan Smith is another good example there. He's a guy that he's had some conditioning issues in the past few years, but last year he came into camp 15 pounds lighter. This year he is, hopefully go be even lighter because he's been working harder in the off season. I know that on his conditioning, he's put in the work, and he had that big year last year. That is the result of the hard work this kid has put in. And yes, I'm calling him a kid, and that's only because he called me old. And that's a story for another time. But he's a guy I'm really looking forward. I really hope he does well this year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Keaton Smith, just because you didn't get the full experience of Keaton Smith in Staten Island a couple years ago. You got close to the full player in Charleston, and we talked about him a couple weeks ago also. This is a guy that kind of got lost with all the success some of those hitters in Charleston were having with the Brandon Lockridges, the Josh Bros. And while guys were getting promoted, Smith was kind of staying where he was. So getting a chance to move up in the system and getting a chance to face better competition, it'll be good to see if he stays at that level.
Well, it's important to know that while he was with Staten Island, he was kind of banged up a little bit. So,
right.
He had a really good healthy year, and we saw what he can do healthy. He just clobbered the ball. He was playing at a level where, he was still young for his level. And this year he's looking to be in Tampa. But I really look forward to seeing him. I think he could be in AA by the end of this year if he continues to clobber the ball like he did last year.
So be sure to follow Rob's coverage of minor league spring training at Pinstripe Pros on Twitter, our Instagram, our Facebook page. Anything else, Rob? Obviously, I think YouTube as well have some videos there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have all the videos on our website. So all the minor league spring training videos will be exclusive for our Dugout subscribers. We may put some stuff out on social media and YouTube to whet your appetite, but most of it will be exclusive for our subscribers, and it's going to be a lot of cool stuff.
Definitely check it out. It's a good one of the great perks of being a Dugout subscriber is checking out the minor league spring training coverage. It's top notch. You don't get it anywhere else. You got to come here because, well, we're the only people that have it. Rob, thanks again for hopping on. Always appreciate it.
Anytime. Happy to come on again.
So like we talked about, we are now providing exclusive minor league content to paid subscribers with our Dugout membership programs. You get scouting reports, player interviews, features, that aforementioned minor league spring training coverage, and much more, in addition to the free major league coverage we already provide. Sign up for our Dugout membership programs for either $7 a month or $63 a year. And by signing up, you have the opportunity to enter contests for game-worn minor league jerseys and other great prizes. So there are going to be great giveaways. That's another reason you should have a subscription. You could win something. So you get great minor league coverage and you win. I think it's two great things there. So be sure to get that Dugout membership program today. Remember, also, we're going to have a poll on the Pinstriped Prospect Twitter page next week. What minor league position that you want us to talk about? We did the lefties this week. I'll throw 4 more options up there, and you get to vote. And whichever one wins, that's what we're talking about next week. So be sure to look out for that. So let's get a little bit into Major League Spring Training. To do that, we have a special guest for today. He's one of our top Major League writers on Pinstripe Prospects. Please welcome Robert Coles to the show. So we have Rob Part 2. Rob, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Rick. I'm doing well. It's been a while since I got to do one of these, so I'm pretty excited to get going.
Happy to have you. So before we get into it, let's get listeners a little bit about you. Tell us a little about yourself, how long you've been at Pinstripe Prospects, things like that.
Yeah, so I actually joined Pinstripe Prospects, I think it was 2 summers ago. A friend of mine saw an ad on Twitter that Rob had put out. He was like, hey, we're looking for an MLB writer. Just sent him a simple email, got on the phone with him, and the rest is history. Just started writing. Been writing for about 2 years, about, article per week, just covering all stuff Yankees. Huge Yankee fan. And, also, try to do my best to incorporate, some statistical analysis, all that stuff, when I'm doing my writing and, try to, put my best foot forward. But yeah, I did that for 2 years at Colgate. Before that, I'd written for a site called iSportsWeb.com, where I was actually covering 3 different sports on a bi-weekly basis. So I was doing the Brooklyn Nets, the NBA, the New York Jets, the NFL, and then, of course, the Yankees. So that kind of covered my sports writing experience, and ever since I started writing for Pinstripe Prospects, I've been trying to do what I can to get involved, doing these types of podcast things. So hopefully, as the season progresses, we can get going.
And let's get started. Of course, it wouldn't be a Yankee podcast without talking about Yankees injuries. And of course, we have another injury update. It's Aaron Judge again, but it's not what you think it is. Of course, you all know by now the fractured rib that he has. We talked about last week with the pectoral muscle, and then it was the shoulder. Now it's the rib. And it's just as the world turns for Aaron Judge, Robert, and you wonder, I don't know when he's coming back. They're going to reevaluate in 2 weeks, but I don't think you could put a timetable on this because, he's been hurt since September.
And it's not just that. It's really frustrating, but, the injury frustrations with Judge seem to go back all the way to 2018. I remember I was actually at the game where Jacob Junis hit him in the wrist with that fastball. I think it was in July or something. And, ever since then, he's just kind of, had his battles on the injury list. He was out for a majority of the second half of the season then in 2018. Then comes back, April 20th in 2019, has that oblique injury, keeps him out for a while. And then, at the end of September, there's that, quote-unquote shoulder injury that, we have now learned has become this tough stress fracture in his ribs. And, it's just tough because when it's something that could have been prevented, especially as we've learned, from the player side, it becomes something pretty head-scratching and even more frustrating because when Judge is out on the field, you just know, everyone's more pumped up. He really brings, good energy to the rest of the team. It feels like, obviously a fan favorite. So it's tough, and it's especially tough, as you said, really having no idea when he can come back. It's hard to believe that he's been struggling with this pec injury for all off season, and then the 2 more weeks or whatever they're going to give him to to rest up and see if it heals anymore. It's hard for me to believe that's going to make a true difference, and it's hard for me to believe that he won't require some level of surgery to get it fixed. So it's just one of those things where he's such a beloved player, not just by Yankees fans, but seemingly throughout the league. It's tough to see him, almost consistently now, start battling with these injuries because, he's not a super young guy. He's probably in his prime right now as we speak. So, the biggest concern now is, how much Aaron Judge are we really going to get for these next couple of years while he's the best player? So, the uncertainty is a little jarring, and yeah, it's hard to really have the belief that he can be ready, truly, in time and play a full healthy season.
Yeah, it's not quite the Luis Severino uncertainty of when you wonder whether Severino is going to be the great pitcher we all expected him to be. But you kind of get that sense a little bit with Judge, where he had the great year a couple of years ago, and the Junis injury with the hit by pitch, you can't blame him for.
Yeah,
that's a fluke. But you hope you don't get to that point where if he has a surgery, then you go, well, is Aaron Judge going to be that great Rookie of the Year candidate again, or is he going to be a good player But is he like, you've seen a lot of polls, like Yankee fans love to put up polls of guys I'd rather extend Aaron Judge or Gleyber Torres, and you just get the sense now the love is going more toward Torres compared to Judge.
Yeah, I mean, and that actually seemed to take a turn last year to a degree too, when Judge was out. I mean, Gleyber kind of, came front and center with the Yankee fans, and it's tough. I mean, a lot of this has to do. I mean, Judge is such a huge guy; he's like a tight end out there. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it would make sense from a Yankees fan's perspective to say, hey, am I gonna, take a chance on the young 20-year-old, that's had a great season last year, stayed healthy, and clearly has a pretty bright future, or am I gonna take a chance on Aaron Judge, who has now a history of injuries that are pretty nagging. Like the oblique definitely is something that seems to never go away. And then the stress fracture in the rib is obviously tough. So I mean, it makes sense. It's hard to put all your trust in a guy that, maybe you don't trust to stay on the field anymore. And I think more than anything, it's just frustrating and to many Yankee fans, just sad because, Aaron Judge is definitely probably most Yankee fans' favorite player right now.
Moving on to the other Yankee injury, Gary Sanchez with the sore back. He also has the flu, so it's a 2 minuses for Gary Sanchez.
Yeah.
He's going to be out till Friday because the Yankees are making a bunch of trips across Florida. They're playing in Jupiter against the Marlins on Wednesday and then in West Palm against the Nationals on Thursday. So you're not going to ask a guy with a bad back to make that long of a bus ride.
Right.
So you hope Gary Sanchez is okay. A lot of people have pointed to the fact that he's learned that new catching stance, that could be a thing here. It's something you don't want to see where after this judgment, you want to hear, oh, now Gary Sanchez all of a sudden, oh, he's fine. Oh, wait, now he's not taking batting practice. Oh, wait, now he's got the flu. It just is. It's like an avalanche thing, if you will, for Sanchez.
I mean, it really is incredible how not just for Sanchez, but the entire team, just these things seem to keep piling up for them. And I mean, the Yankee fans on Twitter today trying to make light of it, saying, of course, one of these Yankees players would get coronavirus or something like that. But luckily that wasn't the case. But I mean, with Gary, I've been one of the biggest Gary supporters, sympathizers for years for writing on the site. I mean, you can go back and see all the articles that I've wrote in favor of him because I just think he has the potential to be such a good hitter. And you brought up the Tanner Swanson hire from Minnesota, and that's a guy who I also wrote about that turned Mitch Garver into, a really serviceable player. I think the year before Tanner came on board, Mitch Garver had something like -9 defensive runs saved when it came to framing. I don't have the exact numbers, but then that went up to basically, 0 or just above 0. So he went from incredibly below average to just about average. And that's from a guy that before that isn't a hitter with the caliber of Gary Sanchez. So it's hard for me to, be like, hey, a lot of people are hating on Sanchez, but I genuinely think he has a chance here to be really good, especially if his defense picks up. I mean, 2 years ago it was the pass balls. Last year it was the framing, and this year's his chance to really kind of remedy all that. We've seen him change his stance behind the plate in spring training already. But yeah, I mean, the injuries are tough. Again, another guy that seems to be hampered by, he has that constant groin injury all the time. It's frustrating. Hopefully he's good to go by Friday. It's kind of also hard for me to believe, seeing as he currently has the flu and then, has all these back issues. But, beyond Gary, I think the Yankees are pretty high on, the backup Kyle Higashioka. He certainly isn't a bad replacement by any means. The Yankees were willing to let Austin Romine move on to the Detroit Tigers, and say Gary isn't ready by opening day, which I'm not so sure. I don't know how much of a stretch that is, but I think Higashioka is a serviceable backup. But that being said, I think it'd be a shame to not have Gary get a full season behind the plate with Tanner Swanson's guidance and really see what he can do, because he's still a great hitter. It's just been the defense, and I think if he can maintain the level that he can hit at, and his ability to hit home runs, his ability to get extra base hits, if he can do that while making his defense that much better, then he just becomes an elite player.
Kyle Higashioka's spring kind of got lost in the shuffle in Lakeland when Garrett Cole had that rough game. Oh yeah, Kyle Higashioka had a great game hitting home runs too, but that gets lost when Cole had the game he had.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at Sanchez before we get into kind of the plan B, if you will, he's a guy I think the Yankees need a lot out of to start the year as opposed toward the middle, because with Judge likely out, Stanton likely out, they kind of need him to be that guy that helps out the offense with Torres in April just to keep things steady, I would think.
I mean, I agree with that, and I think it's tough when you look at a catcher who has lower back issues now. Obviously, that's not ideal, but I mean, I agree with you. I think he is a guy that, especially this season, really needs to be able to say, "Hey, I am one of the better catchers in the league, if not the best catcher in the league." And the reason that is I will make myself the better fielder, thanks, or the better defender, thanks to Tanner Swanson, hopefully. But I don't want people to forget how good of a hitter Gary Sanchez is, and I think he has to have that mindset, and I think he does. He seems to come in every year to spring training looking better in terms of being in shape. He just seems to get unlucky with his injuries. But like you said, I mean, with Stanton and Judge seemingly out, I mean, he's a bat that the Yankees probably need in the lineup every day. I think you're right about that.
And again, I'm a big fan of Higashioka. He's got the power, and he's got a good arm behind the plate as well. So I think he can handle at least starting for a little bit. But here then would be my question. When you look at the Yankees' catching options, it's not great. They don't have that star catcher at least ready to go. Anthony Seager, Josh Rowe are miles away from the majors. Donnie Sands miles away from the majors. So let's throw this hypothetical out there, because then we could say we're ahead of it if Sanchez's news is worse. Better option for the Yankees behind Higashioka. You liking Eric Kratz? You liking Chris Iannetta? Where are you leaning there?
I think initially I lean to Kratz just because he has history in the system. He was a guy that the Brewers liked a lot last year. And I'm not so well versed on his specific numbers, but he is really just a solid player. I mean, and I tend to lean with guys that the Yankees seem to always have an inkling towards trying to just at least put in their system. If you kind of catch my drift, and I just think that in terms of who I think might be the better option there, I would go with Kratz just because I think the Yankees have kind of tried to have him in the system and clearly have some knack for how good he can be, that maybe we don't know.
Kratz, I think, has that good veteran stability I think you would like, especially for the younger pitcher, especially with the Yankees having to go with two young guys at the back of this rotation. I think he makes sense. Iannetta, for his credit, has come in and had a pretty good spring so far, stepping for 17, a couple of doubles, a couple RBIs. He's actually walked 6 times. He has struck out 6 times, but he's shown at least a good plate discipline when he does get into the ball game. So at least he's making a good case where he could be that, if as he gets more work in AAA, if he decides to stay in AAA, he could be a guy to keep an eye on. With the way spring results don't mean as much, but you're seeing both a mix of good hitting and good plate discipline at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that it just kind of seems like whenever it gets down to the Yankees needing someone to step up, Chris Iannetta kind of maybe does strike me as a guy that can kind of find a resurgence, because he's been a household name in the MLB for a while now. I think if you asked the average MLB fan if they knew who Chris Iannetta was, they would probably know the name. And yeah, he has had a solid spring, like you said. Really, just out of a backup, what you really hope to get is someone that can just get on base and then be serviceable at the fielding aspect of the position. And if that's something that he can do, then yeah, I mean, he's also definitely a good option to slot in there.
Let's get into some, of course, observations from major league games and spring training this week. A lot of things we can bounce off with here. Garrett Cole bounced back in a big way on Tuesday against the Blue Jays, hit 100, I believe, on a pitch, struck out 6. Through more of a game mix than throwing a bunch of fastballs they did in Lakeland, so that had to at least calm Yankee Twitter down a little bit. But I got to say, the big story for me from Tuesday at least, Jordan Montgomery's looking really good. I mean, right now, I don't know if you feel like 100% confident with Montgomery at the 4, but he has been really dominant with a 175 batting average against in camp. He's been pretty impressive to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Montgomery is kind of one of those guys that before he got injured, you could kind of rely on him. He'd throw a lot of strikes. He had a great breaking ball. And he's kind of one of those guys when he went out, every fifth day, you kind of assumed he would just put together a solid outing or six, a quality start. And it's good to see that he's able to bounce back, from the setbacks that he's had. But he's had a really solid spring. 4 ERA, sure, but only 11 innings pitched. Seems to be giving up a lot of long balls, but yeah, 175 batting average against, like you said, .73 WHIP. He's definitely serviceable, and I think the Yankees are a team now kind of searching for answers in that rotation, and will be toying with a couple of things throughout the season. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Jordan Montgomery kind of step up and hopefully get a few starts under his belt, gain some momentum, get into a rhythm a little bit, and be able to kind of get back to the pitcher that he was when he first came, which was really solid, serviceable guy that you could actually kind of start trusting every fifth day.
One of my favorite games from this week was part of Split Squad Sunday, and we have another, I think, Split Squad Sunday coming up this week. I love Split Squad Sunday. But the Yankees pitching staff with Tanaka, Brooks Kriske, Adam Ottavino, Zach Britton, Tommy Kahnle, Chad Green, and Domingo Acevedo combined to only allow 2 hits to a Braves offense that had Ronald Acuna, that had not as much major leaguers in there. Peter O'Brien was there. That was interesting blast from the past. Nobody saw it on TV, but we talk about how Jay Happ has kind of had a really good spring training, when he, at least for right now, when he had the one mistake against Philadelphia on Monday, but now he's really good through 4 innings. Mm-hmm. Tanaka's gone really under the radar with the really impressive spring he's having so far through 3 starts.
Yeah, those two guys, I guess I'll start with Happ. The biggest thing with Happ that I think got him into trouble last year is when he just fails to locate. He gets lit up, and especially with the kind of two-seam action he gets on a lot of his pitches. If he's leaving those in the middle of the zone, he's going to get, spanked around the park. But if he's able to keep the ball down in the zone, off the corner, and kind of, draw weak contact, maybe get some swings and misses here and there, and then while doing that, being able to put a 4-seamer up in the zone and kind of attack the corners, then that's when he's his best. But, when he's been able to do that in spring training. But really, he gets dinged, when he's just having trouble locating. And he had a little bit of a dip in velocity last year, I think, which kind of got him to, that mixed with a little worse location than what he's used to. Obviously a recipe for disaster, but he's looked really good. And again, if he can locate, he'll be solid. Same thing goes for Tanaka. When he's on, you can really see it in the action on his splitter. When that ball's going down, it's nearly unhittable, and then sometimes he's just dropping balls into the middle of the strike zone, and he's also getting lit up. So with those two guys, it seems to really, they're not going to overpower you with their stuff, obviously. So it's really about location for those two guys, and to see them both kind of locate the ball well, keep hitters off balance, and generate kind of softer contact and not allowing hitters to square up the ball, that's important. But again, it's risky. That can really fluctuate throughout a season. It may not be something you totally want to rely on with a guy like Happ, who is getting up there in age, might lose it at points throughout the year. It's two guys that can be solid. Again, I'm a little wary of how good they can really be. But if they're locating, they're just as good as anyone in that rotation.
So it's time to play everybody's favorite Yankee game, who's being the 5th starter. Of course, with all that, we need music for that. But a good track record. You got Loaisiga, King, Schmidt. Going off of, we haven't had Ju on the show yet, so who do you want to be the number 5 starter, and who do you think will be the number 5 starter? Probably be the best 2 questions.
I think it's going to be Loaisiga, and I personally love the way Loaisiga has looked. I think he looks a little bit bigger. He looks a little bit stronger on the mound. Fastball looks really sharp. He has a really good combination of fastball changeup. I think the Yankees really like him. I just think that's a guy that has been spoken about for a few years as being someone that can actually be really effective. I think if you ask me, I think it would be Loaisiga in the 5th spot, and I think that's a perfectly serviceable 5th starter. I really like him. I think he'll actually be really good this year.
To me, it's interesting because you've seen Loaisiga in the short stints do really well, and you start to wonder, is that going to be his role? Because if that's his role, I like it. You've seen Mike King in a couple of games this spring, and he's been kind of hit around a little bit. He did give up the 2-run home run to Bethencourt against the Phillies on Monday. He's allowed 11 hits so far. So while King has worked himself out of trouble a couple of times, he has been hit around a little bit. Still, he's not a guy that's going to jump off the page in terms of, again,
Right.
velocity. We've talked about him a little bit on the show. He's still a guy I think that will get the job. But the more Loaisiga goes out there and continues to pitch well, I mean, if it's truly a competition, he might start to gain a little bit on that gap, if you will.
Yeah, and I don't know how deep the Yankees are going to go with an opener, but like you said, I think Loaisiga would be the perfect guy, not to be the opener, but to be the guy that comes in and pitches those second, third, fourth innings. So say you have a guy like Holder come in to open the game, maybe Chad Green, two guys who the Yankees like a lot, and then I think you follow that up, 2, 3, 4 with a guy like Loaisiga who, maybe isn't the best guy for, a 6-inning start, but it could be really effective going once or 1.5 times through an order, and really just helping you stack wins throughout the season. Because he has looked really good, and like you said, if it is a competition, it's hard to believe that he isn't winning it, right now. So yeah, especially out of that opener, spot, not necessarily being the opener, but being that guy that comes in and kind of eats some innings. I mean, yeah, I think he can really thrive in that situation and help the Yankees in a big way.
I still say, please, no Chad Green opener. Keep him where he is. Let him be what he was in the past. Keep his innings down. You need him in October. So no Chad Green opener. I don't want to see that this year. Let's go to the offense. Let's start with the good before we get into the bad. And I know a guy you want to talk about, and a guy that we talked a little about last week who is catching the eye of the coaching staff, Rosell Herrera, continuing to play well. And the Yankees have used him in a couple different positions, used him in third. And then I think, on Monday, used him at second base against the Phillies, too. So they're playing him around the diamond.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting case, right? I mean, this is a guy that's 27 years old, not like some, young new toy. He's kind of just a guy, and I know Rob had spoken about it, throughout, early on in spring training. He said, keep an eye out for Rosell Herrera. I mean, he looks really, really good, and I think he's a professional at the plate. And I mean, he's done nothing but raked in spring training. He's slashing 400, 444, 600. 3 doubles and 25 at bats, 10 for 25 from the plate. I mean, he's doing a lot of great things, but I think beyond that, for the sake of where the Yankees are in terms of their injuries, like you said, he can play basically every position on the diamond, and that's something that can really go a long way. And I really wouldn't be surprised at all to see Rosell Herrera getting a lot of time, in the majors this season, especially if the injury bug is something that continues to be a problem for them.
It goes back to Brian Cashman finding those right guys to give minor league contracts to and to let them prove themselves. Because I think another guy like Thomas Malone, I think, has come in and played well in a couple of games. Had a home run on Sunday. He only had a home run on Monday. So when he's getting a chance to play, he's doing a pretty good job as well. So Cashman's finding those diamonds in the rough again.
Yeah.
I think Herrera is much closer to the big leagues than Malone. Both guys are holding their own out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Herrera is definitely someone that, if you've been watching spring training on a regular basis, you definitely know the name, and you're definitely impressed and think he should probably be, having some sort of a role, at least in the beginning of the season.
Other names to keep an eye on, at least offensively, of course, with the injuries in the outfield, all eyes on Clint Frazier and Miguel Andujar. Clint Frazier continues to hit the ball well. Miguel Andujar as well. I think both of those young players, the big Andujar at least was the question coming back from the injury. The bat's not missing a beat. He swings clearly there, and Clint Frazier is finding a way to continue to get on base and work the counts in the games like we talked about last week as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really impressed, especially with Clint, with how he's still, able to attack the ball really well. I remember when he first traded for him, Cashman couldn't stop talking about his elite bat speed, which is, we see that on occasion when he really squares up a baseball. I mean, he really attacks it. And we've seen that a lot this spring. We saw it on the one home run that he hit. He absolutely crushed to left field. But Clint, if you had to tell me, take one bat and it's Clint or Andujar's, it's probably Andujar's. Even though I've written a lot about how I think Andujar, in terms of, a plate presence, is a little risky because he doesn't draw a lot of walks. He's just kind of a player that puts the ball in play a lot, but doesn't really hit the ball hard consistently. I think he was in the 44th percentile in hard hit percentage in that season, in the 2017 season, when he came up short of Rookie of the Year. So I'm a little worried about that aspect of it. But I mean, he keeps proving me wrong day in, day out, especially in the spring. I mean, he looks really locked in. Maybe once we get to the regular season and he sees some tougher pitches, maybe things will change. But for now, these two guys who I've personally been a little bearish on, haven't been totally bought in on, have really, come out to play. And I think, they know that there's a serious job on the line here, and, they're both going for it.
Of course, while they're as good, DJ LeMahieu also, I think there's a lot of credit for his start to spring training. 10 for 29, 3 RBI, 3 doubles, picking up right where he left off from the regular season last year in the postseason. There is some bad. And the one guy I kind of want to point out, let's start, we'll stay with the same position group. I want to start with Gleyber Torres, who has done okay at the plate, home run, 6 RBI, 5 for 25. Again, that's fine. His defense, whether it's been decision-making or errors just as a whole, has not been good at short.
Yeah,
this is a guy I think this isn't like he didn't play the position for a little bit last year. It's kind of alarming to see just how inconsistent he's been at the position so far.
I mean, this is something that I think is going to be – I don't think this is going to go away. Like watching him play shortstop in spring training is jarring to a degree. I mean, I think he made a couple more errors today, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't have a chance to catch the game, but that's just what I heard. I mean, he just hasn't looked, quote-unquote – he hasn't looked good at his, quote-unquote, natural position. I don't know what that really has to do with. He's played a lot of second base in his career and hasn't really played a bunch of short on the major league level. When he came up, he was maybe not as I don't want to say he's just not. He's thicker now. He's bulkier. He's definitely put on a lot of muscle. He's become more of a power hitter type guy. He wants to hit the ball out of the ballpark clearly. And I think at shortstop, I just don't think this is going to go away. I think, the Yankee fans, like you said, would want to extend, Gleyber over Judge. But I think this season we're going to hear a lot of people clamoring about getting experimental at shortstop. And I don't know what that can really mean exactly, because you look at the Yankees depth chart and, you wonder who the heck do you put there. But, it could be Gio Urshela. It could be even, DJ LeMahieu. And with LeMahieu, it's one of those things where you're like, hey, maybe it'd be good for him because, he's expiring. It would up his value a lot more on the free agent market. Who knows if he would want to do that. But, yeah, I don't think this Torres shortstop issue is going away or going anywhere for that matter. I think it's going to be something that's around for most of the season.
So moving to the other shortstop, Tyler Wade hasn't had a great spring training either. I know we mentioned he had a home run. We talked about it last week. He hasn't done much since. I think he's 2 for 25 in spring. And this is a guy that a lot of people look at as that 26th man, that guy can move around the infield and even play some outfield. I know spring training results aren't the end-all be-all. We always preface that. We don't know what Tyler Wade's working on. But does it get to a point where Wade – remember last year was very controversial that he got left off the roster when they traded for Tauchman.
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting to a point where, as Herrera does more and more, does he get closer to inching out Tyler Wade? The more positions they try him at, the better he plays. I mean, we know Wade could be that backup shortstop to Torres as well, but eventually he's got to hit with the bat, and it hasn't been there, at least so far in Tampa.
Yeah, I've tried to give Tyler Wade like a couple looks, and I like him. When he first came up, I thought he could be a high impact guy, could really affect other teams on the base paths, could put the ball in play. Then he started playing, and he couldn't really hit major league pitching. I mean, I remember before he came up, some beat writers in Trenton were saying how he was the best player in the Yankees farm system. Sorry, in Scranton, were saying how he's the best player on the team and how he was going to come up and make a difference. But he just hasn't really, sadly, been able to prove that he can hit major league pitching at that well of a level. And I think you said it, with the guys like Rosell Herrera really showing up and kind of just taking, their opportunity by storm. I mean, how can you really accurately say, put Tyler Wade in there over guys like that can actually, seem to hit major league pitching at a really good level? And, Tyler Wade's had every chance he could have to prove himself to the Yankees organization, and he just unfortunately hasn't really been able to do it. So like you said, he's really had just a dismal spring training, and I can't really see him sticking around on the roster. And you brought up Tauchman, and Tauchman's another guy. You said Cashman finds these diamonds in the rough. And Tauchman is a really, really good player. I mean, he's a great defender. He can hit at the plate. He's someone that's obviously going to be an everyday player for the Yankees, hoping that calf injury that they had last year doesn't flare up. But with the way things are going, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I think Tyler Wade's just kind of missed his opportunity to truly prove himself as a major league hitter. And I think that's something that, we'll show this year as, we see other guys kind of coming in and trying to fill what I think will be a bit of a hole at shortstop.
If we're going to we're going to rip Wade a little bit, Mike Tauchman's only 1 for 17 this spring, too. So that's something, Tauchman's going to play,
right,
and he should play, but that's also not something you want to see at least start off with. But again, you don't know what he's working on. So he could be working on something totally different. He might have a great week next week, and we're talking about how great he is. But that's also someone when you're hitting point under 100. Gary Sanchez is hitting under 100. So again, it depends on the player, I guess.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. And I know Fangraphs Steamer Projections doesn't love Tauchman that much. I think they have him at like a 91 weighted runs created plus. They have him striking out 22% of the time, even though he struck out 24% of the time last time. But they have him being a similar player to what he was last year. They actually have him being not such a great defender, which I don't know if I agree with. But yeah, Tauchman's just a guy that I tend to trust more than Tyler Wade, just because Tauchman's actually shown the ability to hit with power. He hit 13 home runs in 87 games last year, something that Tyler Wade couldn't really do. And also, Tauchman's probably a better outfielder than Tyler Wade at this point. And I know he's 1 for 17 in spring, but he's sat out most of September with that calf injury, kind of making his way back. Could be working on some stuff, but Tauchman's not really. Has somehow become a guy, over the course of the year that I don't really worry about. I think he's a really solid major league player, and I think he'll be a really reliable piece in the Yankees lineup every day.
So let's wrap up the show. A little bit of final thoughts, and for those unfamiliar with the show, this is the part where we talk about whatever we want to talk about, whatever's on our mind that we didn't get to over the course of this show. So, Rob, since you're the guest, I want to have you start off with something in baseball, something Yankee related you want to talk about that we didn't discuss yet. The floor is yours.
I mean, I guess there's a lot I can think about, but again, I want to go back to something, a name we didn't really say much this podcast, I guess, was Giancarlo Stanton, keeping it Yankee related. I had written earlier this offseason about how I thought Giancarlo was actually going to have a better season than Gleyber Torres, and I truly meant that. Fangraph Steamer before the injury loved him. If he stayed healthy, I thought he was going to really be like a 45 home run, 100 plus RBI guy, and someone that would actually vie for an MVP spot. Obviously, he's hurt right now, and that's too bad. But yeah, he was one of those guys. I mean, I seriously thought that he was ready to have that huge resurgent season, and that season where people turned around and said, "Oh, hey, there's Giancarlo Stanton. There's the guy we know. There's the guy that won the MVP." It's just too bad to see that he's injured. I hope that he's able to make a full recovery because I think that's someone I'm really high on. I think he's someone that can have a dangerous season at the plate for sure.
Definitely. You saw last year in the postseason, he was starting to find it until he got hurt again. So he always goes. You need him for that month or two where like everybody else is struggling, and then he kicks it in a high gear, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
My final thought for this week is, who wants to win the American League? And you look at the American League, you got the Yankees with all their injuries right now, and again, it's nothing panicky yet, but you have to mention that in the grand scheme of things. Blake Snell came back from that little elbow scare he had and was all over the place the other day. Justin Verlander is probably not pitching opening day for the Astros with the mild lat strain he has. And you start to look at the American League and you start to think there really were mainly 4 contenders: Yankees, Astros, Twins, Rays. I would throw in there. People throw the White Sox. I'll throw a couple of teams in there. But we got a bunch of teams in the National League, and they're going to be very competitive with each other. You look at the American League, a lot of merit is not that clear cut right now. You could still say the Yankees. Are you 100% confident in it? I haven't made my American League prediction yet. I'll make it soon. But it's close, and I can't say either team is going in that confident right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially when it comes to, like you said, the Rays. The Rays, even with the Snell injury, the Rays are a team that can win the AL. I mean, they are a really well put together baseball team, and I think they were projected for somewhere around 94 to 96 wins, while the Yankees were projected for 101 before all of these injuries. So before Severino, Paxton, Stanton, Judge all were injured. You know, I think the Yankees were 101 or something, and the Rays were 96. Now you take away all those guys, and that gap really shrinks. So I know, oh, it's the Rays, they're the small market team from Tampa, but no, I mean, that's a team that can seriously make some noise this year, build off that amazing year they had last year. I think the Astros are still going to be really good despite all the trash can, hullabaloo throughout the offseason. I don't think the top is going to change very much throughout the course of the season. I know people love the White Sox, but I'm going to need to see them kind of see that they can gel a little bit throughout the season. Michael Kopech pitched today. He looked really good. That's worth noting, I guess. The Twins, I'm interested to see if they regress a lot. But yeah, I think it's going to stay the same at the top. The question of who wins it is, I would call me crazy, but I would put a dark horse flyer out there on the Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, that's a really good baseball team. Hopefully Snell stays healthy and is able to kind of recover from whatever he's got going on. But that's a really good team. Tyler Glasnow is going to be healthy. They got a lot of young guys that are going to be healthier after last year. I know Yandy Diaz had the broken foot issue in the playoffs and still hit 2 home runs in the wild card game. I mean, that is a really, really good team. They traded Pham, but I actually thought that was a really good trade for them. They saved a lot of money there and got, arguably a better player. I think that's a team to really look out for this year for sure.
You throw the Chris Sale injury with the Red Sox in, it's just really weird in the American League to start off with. You know the teams, but they've got each their own fair share of injury questions going into the season, but of course there's a lot of time. But the Verlander thing's interesting because he's out for a while. Houston doesn't have much depth in their farm system anymore, so that's something to keep an eye on as you watch all the boos they get to start the year. But let's wrap up the show, and Rob, I want to have you tell listeners how they can follow you on Twitter, but also talk about your article you put up on Mike Ford versus Luke Voit, another interesting spring training battle at first base.
Yes. Well, first of all, you can follow me on Twitter at rcoles. That's RCOLES 0206. So that's my Twitter handle. I'm trying to get a little bit more active on it. Basically, all I do on there now is retweet some of the side stuff. But I'd love to be more active. I'd love to put more of my opinions out there. So a follow would be awesome. I'm happy to chat. You can always DM me. I love talking Yankees all the time. But yeah, as for the Voit kind of comparison. It was really interesting when I was looking at the numbers because they are truly similar. But starting with Ford, this is a guy that's was really good last year. I laid it out there, but above average in exit velo, launch angle, xWOBA, hard hit percentage, home run per fly ball percentage was 23.5. So he's really making solid contact. And he was really disciplined at the plate. So above average walk rate, didn't chase a lot, really swung at pitches in the zone. So, I started looking at him and was like, hey, this is, a really good hitter. Granted, he's terrible in the field, but so is Voit. And then, Fangraphs with their projections actually projects Ford to arguably be slightly better. So, if you look here, Voit, I think, is projected to have 250 batting average. So basically slashing 250, 342, 447. And you look at Ford, it's 255, 340, 487. With a better WOBA and a better weighted runs created plus. So it makes you think, hey, we've been kind of assuming that Luke Voigt's going to be this guy to start every single day, for the Yankees this season, but that may not be the case, especially if he struggles, especially since Mike Ford is a left-handed bat and someone that, has shown the ability to hit like a pro. Take a lot of pitches and swing at the right pitches and hit it over the fence. And that's obviously something the Yankees value. So yeah, Mike Ford, very, very big on Mike Ford. Think he can have a really solid season. Zips for some reason projects him at 122 games, but I don't think that's something to really pay attention to. But it's something that could happen. If Voit gets hurt, if Voit really struggles at times, and the Yankees say, hey, you know what, let's get Mike Ford out there and be our first baseman.
So be sure to check out that article over at pinstripeprospects.com. Of course, you can check out Rob's players to watch at Minor League spring training this week, Rob Pimpsner, because we got 2 Robs today. I want to thank both Robs for hopping on the show this week. Again, we want to remind you can get in touch with us at any time. Tweet us at Pinstripe Pros. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555. You can email me, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. I'm happy to hear any of your feedback, any questions, comments you have on the show. Feel free to give a feedback and a 5-star rating on iTunes. Any kind of rating, comments you have are appreciated. Subscribe us on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, any place you get your podcasts. Or you can leave us a voicemail, 908-376-6360. Again, it's 908-376-6360. So myself and hopefully James O'Connell will be back next week, and we'll look ahead to – we'll be about a week away from the start of Yankees actual games that count. So we'll definitely look forward to that. Some big games this week. Got Davey Garcia pitching against the Marlins on Wednesday. That game, I believe, is on LB Network, so that should be good. You have Jonathan Weisger pitching against the Nationals on Thursday. Another game, and I believe, on TV as well. And Split Squad Sunday. So you get to see every Yankee pretty much in action on Sunday. I think one team is against Twins in Tampa. The other one's in Dunedin against the Blue Jays. So it should be fun. So from all of us here, Pinstripe Prospects, for Rob, I'm Ricky Keeler saying enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy Yankees baseball. And we'll see you back here next time. Stay safe, everybody.